the way out of ideological traps. And the question is, how and what are the ways to know who you are? Because I don't think it's as easy as it sounds. Like, who are you?
It's impossible. People are really complicated. Yeah. You're way more complicated than anything else except another person, right? You're the most complicated thing that exists.
Then put two complicated people together and...
Yeah, well, hopefully they can help each other sort themselves out, at least to some degree. But yeah, I mean, to be self-aware completely is just not possible because, what we try to do to understand ourselves is limit what we'll do. And you do that to other people too. Say, well, I know you. And then you punish them if they do things you don't understand. That way they stay in the box you put them in. And there's downside to that and an upside. It's part of the social contract not to do outrageous things, although you could. So we all abide by these rules, and that simplifies us a lot. Right. That's part of being polite is you don't want the bank teller to be complex. You want them to be polite and simple. So your limited understanding is sufficient. And we do that with each other all the time, except when we're emotional.
How do you find the individuality, your uniqueness, your specialness?
Well, that probably manifests itself to a large degree in what you're interested in.
Which is difficult to know. I think that's also difficult to know. I felt like it took into my mid-30s before I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in these things.
Were you interested in all sorts of things?
Sure. Yeah. When I was young, I did all sports. I, then was a teenager, but it wasn't until I was really in my 30s that I really realized how much I enjoyed art, how much I enjoyed, creating and artistic things, how much I enjoyed nature, how much I enjoyed traveling and alone time because I'm a bit of an introvert. So it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s till I figured that out. To me, that creates some of my individuality. That's who I am. But how do people figure that out so that they know who they are, so they don't fall into ideological traps?
Well, so the first question is knowing yourself the way out of an ideological trap? Well, it is to some degree because one size doesn't fit all, right? So you have to be aware of how you differ. And that does take a long time to figure out who you are because you're complicated. So it might not be that surprising at all that it took you till your mid-30s before you started to have some sense of who you really were because people are very hard to understand. And we don't have a good vocabulary, generally speaking, for analyzing differences in people. I mean, the personality test I described is a step in that direction. But it's that lexicon, that vocabulary still isn't popularly established, let's say. So it isn't part of the conversations we have about other people except accidentally. I produce this other technology at self-authoring that helps people write about their past, analyze their faults and their virtues, and write a plan for the future. It's a useful way of figuring out who you are. You kind of have to hit yourself against the world, but you tell the story about your past, and that helps you understand where you came from. You figure out your virtues and your faults. That sort of helps you understand your strengths and weaknesses. And then a plan gives you a course for the future. It's hard to do all that writing, but it's hard to blunder through life too without a plan. So it's hard either way.
Pick your hard. You always talk about that. Choose the difficult, or the difficult will choose you eventually, and you might not like it as much, right?
Yeah, well, when it's necessary, like I wouldn't say to go out of your way necessarily to make your life difficult, but if you have a difficult choice in front of you and it's either abandon what you should be doing or do the difficult thing, well, you're going to pay a price for abandonment. So, and I guess I would also say that to understand yourself, it's quite useful to try to not lie, as you tangle yourself up in your own lies. People think they can get away with lying, but you can't get away with falsifying the structure of the world. You're going to pay for it. I've never seen anybody get away with anything in my clinical practice. No, the other shoe always dropped. Always. And unsurprisingly, if you drop a weight on your head, above your head, Like, it's fine until it hits you. Yeah.
But then there's changing your mind.
Yeah, there you can be wrong. That's different. That's a good point, though. It's difficult to dissociate ignorance from lying, but, you get punished when you're wrong often, but that's different, It's not like it's nothing to be ignorant, to be wrong. It's still hard on you, but it's a different kind of hard to be willfully wrong when you know better.
Are there things that you believe differently today than you did 10, 20, 30 years ago, or when you were young?
Oh, God, yes. Almost everything.
Almost everything?
Almost everything. Yeah.
What's the most recent thing then?
Well, I probably learned in the last couple of years that I should have had a broader range of interests, simple interests, because almost everything I did was really complicated. So then when I got ill, I couldn't do anything because everything I did was complicated.
Huh. Wow.
So
you wrote this
that
book.
Was a problem.
You wrote a lot of your latest book, Beyond Order, while you were sick, right?
Yes.
Was that hard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it wasn't as hard as not doing it, though. Right.
Did it bring you
need
joy?
Things to keep you going.
Did it bring
No.
you a certain level of joy to do it?
No, nothing was bringing me joy. But it brought significance. It was meaningful. So that was useful. But